Welcome, friends, to another episode of The Soul Call with Kelly B. Today, I'm so excited to introduce my guest, a truly inspiring soul who has dedicated her life to helping others connect with their higher selves and transform their lives. Today, I'm joined by Rochelle Karslake, an international psychic and medium, an Angelic Reiki Master Teacher, and an advanced Theta Healing practitioner. Rochelle is also a priestess, an angel expert for the monthly online magazine Spiritual Lifestyle, and co-author of the #1 best-selling book, When the Goddess Calls. Rochelle is not only a gifted healer, but she is also a devoted wife and mother to 3 boys, 2 of whom are severely autistic. She's a passionate vegan, an animal lover, and a home education mum to her eldest, as well as a strong advocate for alternative education for children. Her mission is clear and powerful: to support, educate, and empower others, reminding us all that we are not defined by our circumstances. Our past does not determine our future, and we can truly become whatever we believe we can be. Rochelle, I'm so honoured to have you and your beautiful energy here today for this wonderful conversation. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, and it truly is an honour to share this incredible space with you. Thank you so much for creating it and for inviting me to share it.
Oh, so blessed, Rochelle. And before we begin, I want to give a loving thank you and shout out to our shared friend, Diane Pegler. Diane, as we mentioned before I press record, was a previous guest on my podcast here, and she's written an incredible book herself. So Diane introduced me to you, and we had a brief conversation a couple of weeks ago now. And there was just such a beautiful resonance, just heart resonance with you, Rochelle. And as Diane says, your voice alone, your voice has this beautiful frequency that just takes you away to like a really beautiful place. So I want to thank Diane, and I want to thank yourself for coming here today.
So welcome. Yes, thank you, Diane. I absolutely love and adore her. She's
Oh.
incredible.
Now, Rochelle, listening to your bio there, the introduction that I just gave, when you hear that back, that I know it's just a synopsis of
Mm.
who you are and how you show up in the world,
Mhm.
how does it make you feel hearing that introduction in that bio when you hear, gosh, this is me that's being described here? How do you
Mm.
feel?
Well, you know, one of the things that um, I regularly come back to in terms of sort of where I am on a day-to-day basis, where I am within my journey. I know that my life has been, I have lived within the divine mercy of the Creator's grace. The fact that I'm still here, the fact that I managed to make it out of the darkness, um, I still have to pinch myself sometimes. I'm not even kidding. And um, it's a daily intention. It's daily work, but none of what I have become is what I set out to do. I just set out to heal. That was it. And everything else has become a byproduct of that. And that's grace. You know, I couldn't have made it happen if I tried to forge it out. because I don't feel I'd have been coming from the right place. And ultimately, everything I've become and ended up creating, I didn't even want to do. I had no intention. I didn't want to teach. I didn't want to hold space. You know, I just wanted to heal. And it's been an organic evolution into everything that, you know, is in my now experience, and more stuff is being created all the time. And I just am so honored and humbled by all of it, the light and the dark, you know, and everything in between.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And already, those of you that are tuning in will hear what I mean by the resonance of your voice, Rochelle. There is such authenticity, there's such a vibration of authenticity in the message that you deliver, and the conscious choosing of these beautiful words and how you're expressing your journey. There is such reverence for the divine plan that's unfolded for you, which has been much greater than you had ever imagined or anticipated. And your story is such an incredible example of that,
Mm.
because there has been such a surrender to trust. So we just start with the first step of, I just want to heal, I want to help people. And then how that journey has unfolded
Mm.
in co-creation with the divine. But
Mm.
there has to be a great honouring of yourself too, because so many choose not to make the steps. So
Mm.
well done for hearing the call and, you know, taking the aligned action. So I would love to just unpick what you've shared with us a little bit more fully, if that's okay with yourself. You've acknowledged that, you know, you have great love and respect for the light and the darkness
Mm.
that has been expressed in your life, because there's great learning in it all, isn't it? Um, what have those darkened moments been like for you when you mentioned, you know, I'm lucky to be here, it's
Mm.
there have been dark moments. What are you referring to there, Rochelle?
So I think it's probably easier to kind of go back to the beginning and then come to where I am now, and my appreciation of it and my insight. Um, I had I was actually born in the States, and I moved over to the UK with my mum and my sister, and it was only meant to be temporary. But we ended up staying. Obviously, I'm still here, but I am dual national, so it's the, you know, that connection has always been there. But one of the things that resulted in that move was losing touch with my dad. And I had no contact with him till I was 15. I didn't know who he was. And I always felt that absence, you know, and whilst I had a lot of love within my life, I was aware I was very different in many ways. You know, we had moved into a very English village, and my mum's actually French, so no one else was called Rochelle, which, believe it or not, back then was a very foreign name, you know, and just everything, you know, nobody else had a single mum. Like, everyone else had two parents, and I had I still have actually dyslexia as well, which obviously wasn't really understood at that time. And so I really struggled to find where I fit and where I belonged within that space, and why, you know. My mum and my sister are still both very academically intellectual, you know, and And I come back to, there's that beautiful quote that it's like, if the goldfish is judged by its ability to climb the tree, it will spend its whole life believing it's stupid. And that's kind of where I was for a long time. But I had spiritual connection. My first ever memory was with spirit, and I got to experience emerging with unconditional love. And within that moment of experiencing that merging, it's the best way I can explain it, I was imparted wisdom and insight and higher perspective. And at the time, I was literally only about 18 months old, 2 years old. But that's something that's never left me. And that impartation I still have to this day. And I feel like on reflection, it was so I could look back and always have that as that frame of reference to remember who I am in truth. If I forget along the way and give in to society's projections of what I should be or where I should be. And so later on, I ended up experiencing in my later childhood sexual abuse, which was just soul destroying at the time, obviously. And it went on for some time. And I remember not wanting to share it. Well, I didn't want to, I knew it was wrong. I didn't want to make things worse. I'm not going to go into the situation because of people, but I didn't want to bring it to light because I knew it would cause so much damage. And but eventually it did come to light. And sort of fast forwarding from that point, however it came to be, this person was welcomed back into our lives. And I just didn't deal very well with that, because I felt like I had absolutely no value whatsoever. This sort of snowballed into addiction, and actually spending my 15th birthday in rehab for addiction, but mostly cocaine. And that was a very interesting time because that was my first real introduction to healing. Not that I really understood it in the way that I understand it now, but I'm so grateful for that experience because I look back and I see just how much it correlates with the work that I'm doing now, and that, addiction doesn't always have to be to a substance. It can be to relationships, it can be to drama, it can be to anything. And so much of what I learned there, I apply with my own students now, and within my own space of emotional healing, because that's ultimately what it is. That's what addiction is. And so as a result of that, I literally had no self-worth whatsoever. And so the way that I kind of remedied that was by actually becoming very promiscuous and just literally trying to, because within those moments I felt wanted, I felt needed, and I felt that was my only worth. And this was like a cycle. And and I couldn't seem to break it, even though I knew I wasn't happy. And so eventually I actually met my now husband, who was the instigator to almost helping me kind of break this cycle. And he was incredible. But what happened then was I then became really codependent and really, really needy and just needing validating all the time. And so that wasn't healthy either, we were in, these cycles. And so it all kind of came to a head within an 18-month period. I'd had my 3 children, and then my husband had actually gone to get a vasectomy, and then I found out I was pregnant, and I decided that he was obviously meant to be here, because what were the chances, right? But it turned out that he was very, 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 very poorly, and that he would never make it to full term, and that the best thing I could do was to have him early. And so I ended up having to have him at 20 weeks on the maternity ward, in the room next door to where I had one of my other sons, and all you can hear is babies crying. It was just, it was very challenging. And I remember at that time thinking, I can't allow this to just be a bad experience. I am going to learn whatever there is to be learned from this, because I had to make it mean something. And that was the only way I could figure out a way that I was honoring him and our connection. And so that was a big thing to kind of grow through. And then within 18 months of that, my 2 youngest children, who were 3 and 2, both got diagnosed as severely autistic and like mentally impaired, right? And it just felt like a life sentence. And like the rug was literally whipped from beneath my feet. Like one minute I was thinking about, just what am I going to buy from the shops? Like that was the biggest stress in my life, kind of thing. And then, boom, kind of being hit with this, and it just sent me into a tailspin, an absolute tailspin. I was already hugely depressed, had been for years. I was on high doses of medication for depression and anxiety. And I knew that I was so close to just falling into that black hole and never coming out. I was so close to that. And the thing is, I knew that there had always been a spiritual calling on my life, always. And I'd always been like, no, not ready yet, still got a bit more self-destruction to go through, still got a bit more, self-abuse, still too connected to my victimhood, and not ready. And what's interesting is about 3 months before I found out about my baby, I had started connecting with Abraham Hicks teachings, who is the the God parent of law of attraction. And then literally my life blew up. And I remember thinking at the time, from a much smaller place, like, God, I should have just left it alone. Kind of felt like I'd opened Pandora's box somewhat. But a few years later, in a class I was doing, I had the realization and the clarity come in that it wasn't a curse or anything like that. It was actually a grace period, because everything that was coming was coming. But what it did is it gave me the opportunity to open up my mind just that little bit more, so that I could have a slightly higher, different insight perspective, which is what I believe, which is grace, right? Which is what I ultimately clung to. And so I made the decision that I was going to, find help and heal. And so the first place that I felt called to was actually church, because it's kind of all I knew really at the time. And so I found a nice little church around the corner. And, I would be listening to spiritual teachers of all denominations all day long in my ears, going to sleep with meditations or sermons or talks or lectures, because if I had to press pause and go for a wee, by the time I came out the toilet, I was back in anxiety again. I needed that constant reminder that I was, that it, to have faith. Okay. And actually, that was one of the things at the time that changed and saved my life, was hearing the just one simple sentence. It was hearing, your circumstances don't have to dictate how you feel. And before I heard that, like, that changed everything, because until I heard that, I didn't even know I had a choice. And that is where I slowly started taking my power back, because even in the midst of everything that was out of my control, I still had a choice. And even if I didn't feel strong enough to make it, I had that choice, and I kept coming back to that. And that was huge for me. And so, and even to this day, some of the most beautiful concepts, teachings, analogies, I have found within the Christian faith. Like, but I'm a huge believer in not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? So it's like, as I've grown and evolved, things that once resonated with me start not to, and other things do. But if something has inspired me, if something has helped an aspect of me heal, even if I don't align with all of it, there's still value in that, and I'm taking it with me, And I, there's that beautiful saying. Dr. Wayne Dyer talks about, I'm not going to do him justice, but he talks about the concept of truth, and that how our truth changes as we get older. What was true in the morning by the afternoon is no longer. And then what's true in the evening, the afternoon has become a lie, because each aspect is a different part of being. It's a different experience. And so our truths should change as we evolve and grow. And that's part of it, I believe. And so, but within the church, I felt there was a definite lid, but I would get pity, and people didn't really know what to say to me. And I was looking for faith-filled people to tell me, what, you've got this, like, you can do this, and it just wasn't there. And so I then made the transition over to a spiritualist church. I don't even know how, I didn't even know they existed. But I found this church in the next town over, and I went to a service, and there was a medium giving a demonstration, and I received the last message of the evening, basically saying, you're in the right place, you know, you're on the right track, and this is the work you're meant to be doing. And I was just like, whoa. So I ended up going to that spiritualist church every Wednesday night, and sitting in circle. Now, psychic and mediumship development was not what I was looking for at all. I was more interested in manifesting and mind science and quantum physics and what have you. But it was closer than the church, right? So and so I sat in circle there every week for about 3 or 4 years. And I found out I was quite good at it. You know, everything that I had shut down as a child, I was then tapping back into and allowing that flow to kind of come back through me. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And it was an incredible place to learn. But after a while, I remember kind of looking around at, you know, the people that would come, and there's, you know, absolutely no judgment whatsoever. But there was a lot of illness, you know, a lot of people were talking lack and scarcity all the time. Lots of ego and moaning and complaining, and I'm like, this isn't alignment either, you know. And I was ready for something more. And so I ended up finding, I was looking for a law of attraction, really. And I ended up finding a lady who was running a workshop, probably within 6 months of setting the intention. And when I turned up, this beautiful woman just walked down this packed old spiritualist church right down the middle, and just gave me the biggest hug and just welcomed me into that space. And I knew I was where I was meant to be. Like, there was no two ways about it. You know, she was just such a high vibrational, bright light. And I couldn't believe it was on my doorstep. Like, couldn't believe, I thought I'd have to go to London or something to find this kind of group of people and these kind of teachings. And I remember saying to her that night, you know, I have been asking the universe for something like this. And she just looked at me and smiled and said, and I put out to the universe for the right people to show up, you know. And so that was the beginning of my healing journey, really, in a deeper sense. She she invited me to a Reiki share, and I wasn't really interested in that. I actually had no idea at the time that there was even any well, I believed there was separate parts, like there was, you know, spiritual development, and then there's healing. Now I know they're one and the same. Like, you can't really have one without the other. It's the same thing. But I didn't think, as crazy as everything had been, I didn't think I needed healing. I was just going to manifest my way out of everything, and you know, and that was my plan. And so she invited me to this Reiki share, and I went because I really liked her, but I wasn't interested in the event. She had done lots of other things, like, as I said, law of attraction, angels, other instructions to, you know, meditations and stuff like that. And so I thought, okay, I'll go. And I went, and I have to be honest, it was kind of what I was expecting. But I have to say, I probably think back now that an aspect of that was probably my own resistance. But I left thinking, yeah, it's not for me. You know, this healing lark's just not for me. And so left it there and carried on with life. And then about a month later, she invited me again, and I thought, okay, I'll give it another go. And this time it was Angelic Reiki, and it blew my socks off. And I didn't even know. I didn't even know what happened. I just knew I needed that in my life. And that was the beginning, you know. And I showed up every single week, and I became attuned to it. And I you know, the lady who was teaching it, I was assisting every weekend that she would teach. I was there, you know. It was just I had to have this in my life. And so it kind of it was the healing modality that changed and saved my life, without question, because I was absolutely broken, you know, absolutely broken. And within the space of this incredibly powerful modality, you know, I was reminded I was never seen in my brokenness. I was never seen as broken, you know, even though that's how I felt. And I just kept being and receiving the projection of my wholeness and who I am in truth, and had that space held for me by my teacher until I was able to catch up for it for myself and receive that. And I remember thinking when I met her, like, you know, she takes it with her wherever she goes, that energy of just, you know, being centered, being comfortable, being aligned, you know. And for me, it was still so conditional. It's like I had to get there on a Wednesday, you know, otherwise, you know. And so, you know, over time, as I have, you know, integrated, like, this is my life. I live, breathe, sleep, eat. This is everything. You know, I'm now at that stage where wherever I am, I take it with me, because I've embodied it, you know, and it's who I am. And I'm unafraid now to be who I am in divine truth and within my own authenticity and sovereignty, even in the face of other people's fear, you know, which isn't always easy. But for me, there's no plan B. This is it, you know. This is it. I don't. And so that led on to learning Theta Healing as well, which is an incredible modality where we literally go into the subconscious and change our belief systems from lack, unworthiness, lack of self-love, anything that is a distorted perception of who we are, you know, and what's holding us back and what we've bought into. And we're able to clear that through past lives, through our lineage, through our subconscious, you know, on a soul level, however it presents. And that has been incredibly powerful in helping me transition, transform, and expand into more of who I already inherently am, you know. And I am very different. I have made significant changes over the years, but I don't like the phrase, you know, when people say, oh, you know, she's a different person, because I think, you know, I'm not, or any of us that make big changes, I'm not a different person. If anything, I'm just connecting back and expanding into more of who I already inherently am. That's it. It's not change. It's not a becoming so much. It's more of an unbecoming, you know, of stripping back the conditions of, you know, victimhood and resentment and sadness and everything that's keeping us from connecting with who we inherently are, you know, the limitations that we fight so aggressively for, as to why it won't work for us, or why we can't be helped, or why it might work for it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was the queen of that. And I feel like now, you know, I just like, don't get me wrong, life still continues to be life, but I have the tools to be able to you know, navigate through challenges when they arise. And interestingly enough, I started teaching Angelic Reiki in 2019. And again, didn't want to, had absolutely no interest, but it was just one of those things that organically grew and became. And like I literally, and to this day, and this is how I know the work that I'm doing is not only in alignment, but is in true service to the creator and to the divine. Because, you know, somebody asked me a little while ago, like, how did you get to where you are? And I'm like, honestly, I just said yes to every opportunity that came along, even when it frightened the life out of me. And so, but within that, I do work incredibly hard. I work incredibly hard within the opportunities that come to me. But when I tell you, I couldn't work less hard for the opportunities. They just keep coming. And I know we were talking at the beginning about resonance, you know, and about how many of us out there, you know, are waking up and are feeling the call to step onto this path, and however we're being called to work. And so so I was going to start in the spring of 2019, and then not quite suddenly, but my dad passed away in the April, and he had had lung cancer for 3 years, but he was in California, and so I wasn't able to be there. And that was a huge thing because, you know, as much grief as I felt, I also knew that, and was so incredibly grateful for the knowledge and the wisdom and the remembering, you know, that that I had now, because, and the tools, because I would not have been able to cope or deal with it beforehand. Absolutely not. And I also know, and again, you know, trusting in the divine timing of the universe and how everything miraculously and just beautifully comes into alignment, is that I had to go through that and experience, because it's only really life experience that teaches, experience that journey of surrender and grief, because we can only meet people as deeply as we've met ourselves. And so I needed that to be able to bring that into the space that I hold for others. And that's what I mean about the darkness and the light, because I've come to the realization now that I believe we're all here for the soul's growth. And within that space, we grow through the lessons that our soul chooses to experience. And they'll look different for all of us. But within every situation, every challenge and every aspect of contrast, I believe that the soul purpose in experiencing it is because our soul has chosen to master the virtue within it. And that's so powerful. And sometimes I need to remind myself, like, you chose this, Rochelle, you chose this. Like, remember, you chose this, you know. But and so when we're able to connect with that and that higher perspective, it doesn't almost feel so personal, when we're coming from a disempowered place of like, what, you know, but it's like it's solely happening to aid you in your growth. And that the people who come and hurt us the most, our abusers, are, you know, the people who have inflicted trauma and what have you on us, on a soul level, are the ones that love us the most because they're giving us the biggest opportunities to grow. And, you know, for me, I believe that. And, when we hear the truth, it resonates. And I take that into everything that I do because, there's aspects within like my daily life that I need reminding of, and especially like with my children, it's like they've been such an incredible gift. They've been the catalyst for my journey. And there's something truly humbling about being in the presence of another human being who can't even fathom the concept of lack of self-love and is unable to be conditioned out of self-love and will only ever see me in that light as well, in my truth. Something incredibly profound there. And whilst it does come with its challenges, I'm so grateful because they don't allow me to get comfortable in my practice. You know, they because I'm constantly being faced with what I need to work through, and what I need to surrender into, and also recognizing the beauty and the divine orchestration within that, you know.
Absolutely. Wow, Rochelle, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your truth so, I don't want to use the word vulnerable because it's actually empowering what you've really shared. And I'm sure there will have been very vulnerable moments throughout that journey that you had to experience as part of the journey, because without the vulnerability, we don't know courage. And there's the duality right there. And, courage comes from cœur, the French word for heart. So to have all this heart courage to share your story, your journey, and by the way, what an effing journey it's been. Oh my God. I'm just like listening to this thinking, do you know, there is so much I could reflect back because I resonate with so much of it. And you've so beautifully articulated the trauma, the abuse, the huge challenges, the adversities. But through all of that, you've woven so beautifully that I had that choice to stay in victimhood and to remain as this label and identifying with the experience of what's happened to me and life has happened to me. And woven so beautifully through that journey, how you've come to know yourself as a soul, to heal yourself at such a deep level that you are now feeling so filled to the brim with gratitude. That's what's really coming through here is the gratitude for all the lived experience that you have had and taking that now into sharing that so authentically to be that gift to others, to say it's okay, I've walked, in these shoes, here are my shoes, I've walked in many places and here is where I am now. And that gives others hope. And it's just such an incredibly beautiful thing because you You'd said early on that your mum and your sister were academic and that you had struggled with dyslexia and identifying a place of belonging early on in your life, even though you'd had that, 18 months, 2-year-old experience of
Mm.
knowing that there's something else here, there's a
Mm.
purpose to your soul being here in this incarnation. But you've so beautifully illustrated this. Well, I belong here for so long, and this is transient now. I'm now going here. I belong here for so long, and this is transient again. And then the way that, because this is all about truth, right? So coming back to the point that you made, which was so beautiful about your personal truth, was correct at every stage and phase of your life, because that was your truth at that time. And now, I mean, and also we can connect into collective truths, the collective truths of, you spoke about religion, for example, going to the church, and you learned a lot there about yourself, and there were so many beautiful things there. But actually, over time, the truth of that was different, and you found that I maybe don't necessarily align here anymore with all of this. And you can see where people they build safety in these collective truths. And
Mhm.
so it takes courage to step out of that herd, if you like, to say, actually, I'm questioning some of this. And now that I'm evolving as a soul, this is lovely. This is great. This resonates with me. But actually, I'm on the next step in my journey now.
Mm.
And I'm now finding that I belong in the spiritualist church
Mm.
for a time.
Mhm.
And so much I want to reflect back to you because I really resonate with, although my journey's different, but and I know that everybody tuning into this will be like, yeah, my journey's been like that too.
Mm.
It look different, different
Mhm.
characters and different lessons perhaps, but ultimately what you're peeling back are the layers of the emotional healing
Mm.
and finding the core of who you are, the truth of who you came in here as a soul to be. It is all that remembrance, isn't it? You were always here. And so
Mhm.
when people are saying to you, gosh, you've changed, well, actually, it's been a lot of bloody hard work to take
Right.
off all the layers, all the projections,
Mm.
all the concept of
Conditioning.
self that
Yeah.
was false, the abuse, the trauma. I'm not that. I'm not that. I'm not that. I'm
Yeah.
not that. It's like, oh, here I am. And it's
Mm.
bringing you back home to the heart. And
Yeah.
I just wanted to reflect how beautiful that is that you have expressed that in such an incredible way that it's such an empowering thing to share your personal journey. Because I didn't know about the abuse and the traumas that you'd experienced. And I bet there's more than what you've
Oh,
shared.
there's a lot more.
I can imagine, because I can totally imagine that.
Yeah.
But it's all brought you to who you are now in this place of embodiment. You're embodied in the knowing, the heart gnosis of who you are as a soul, and will continue to evolve and grow. So thank you so much for sharing the depth of all of that, because I really want people to own their story, not getting overly attached to the story, but
Mhm.
the story of your life. And when I do my deep coaching programs with people, incorporate, the timeline of your life and really looking at those pivotal moments in your life that have really shaped you. And very often, most often, I would say it's the darkness. It's
Yeah.
going into the depths of the belly of the beast. It's
Right.
like which is within us. It's like
Yeah.
we have to go. I've got a card in my soul call
Mhm.
deck here. It's called soul mining. It's going
Right.
into the
Mm.
depths of the mind to find the gold. And of course, that's
Mhm.
within us. It's all allegory. It's all just, metaphorical language to say, we're going in here. Let's go. And that's the hard work. That's the hard
Mm.
work that people maybe don't see on the outside.
Mm.
So when they're saying to you, gosh, you've changed,
Mm.
they've not seen and experienced the level and the depth of the work that it's taken.
And Yeah, and I just want to say, I think it's really important to share from time to time, because I think especially, with people who meet me now as a teacher in a healing capacity, think, oh, well, she's got it all figured out. Like, she hasn't had it that hard. Like, and I'm like, oh, you have no idea. Like, like, I promise you, because one of my favorite things is to, remind people that we're not our stories.
Mhm.
We're not what happened to us.
Mhm.
And that's such a liberating thing when that penny drops for
Mhm.
people. Oh my
Mhm.
God. Like, I don't have to wear this like a coat or a badge anymore,
Mhm.
of and I get it, because I was there, for the longest time. But it's so empowering, and I honestly believe as well that it's like, you know, everything that I've been through, um, it's not punishment. It's preparation for what I'm being called to step into.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, God, that's grace, and I'm so grateful. It makes me feel emotional just to even connect with that. And how I am now able to help and empower other people. Like, Angelic Reiki is the modality that changed and saved my life. It is now my joy to share it with other people and see how it positively impacts them. I am incredibly blessed to be able to hold in-person shares weekly at Margate at the Goddess Rooms, and once a month online. And I promise you, we have so many different walks of life that come into this space. Um, just men and women, and everybody is at a different point along their path. But what I love about this modality is that it does the work. I don't need to do anything. If somebody comes in and isn't truly within their heart, or isn't really ready to heal, they just can't withstand being in that space for very long. And so I don't have to, they just peter out. Sometimes they come back, the door's always open. And like you said, there's no judgment, because not everybody's come to wake up this time. And that's part of our collective experience. But the one thing that brings us all together and connects us is our commitment to coming back into our heart spaces and to healing. And it's so incredibly beautiful. And I'm telling you, every single person that comes is thriving in their own way. And they still have their life challenges, and they still, life is still life. And, but they are thriving in their own individual ways. And I feel so incredibly proud, because where else is doing that? You know what I mean? Like, in terms of, like, it wasn't happening at the church I went to, it wasn't happening at the spiritualist church. I know it's happening,
Yeah. Yeah.
but how blessed are we that we get to be a part of it, and just feeling the gratitude for the people who went before us and
Mhm.
who opened those doors. Ultimately we can only do it for ourselves, but for the people who can guide us
Mhm.
into those healing spaces, and hold space for us while we fall apart, you know have those breakdowns, so that ultimately we can have the breakthrough on the other side. For all of the incredible teachers, like, my teacher Tina Pavlo, who's just the most beautiful soul, who's the creator of the Goddess Rooms. She was that person for me, and I will always, always honor her and have a space in my heart for her and everything that she's done, because I wouldn't be here without her love and kindness. And because I received that, I know how to give that to others. And she uses the analogy of, like, the light in the candle. Like, her light was lit by her teachers, and she's lighting up me, and now I'm lighting up
Oh,
others, and we take it with us wherever we go.
yeah.
At the end of my shares every week, I always ask the Creator for us to, now that we're connected to our hearts and to our light, Creator, let us be the advocates so that we can, anyone we come into contact with, that we're able to help and inspire them to find their way back into their heart and to connect with their own light, allowing this ripple effect to go as far and as wide as is needed. And we'll never truly know the effects or the lengths that these spaces reach, but I take an enormous amount of comfort in knowing that it's happening.
So
Yeah.
beautiful, so beautiful. And it's something that we have in common. So angelic Reiki, as you know, either I found it or it found me. I'm not quite sure which is which, but divine synchronicity brought it into my life in 2013, I think it was, 2012, 2013. And although I've not gone on to train as a teacher, I'm going to say yet,
Yeah.
I was absolutely blown away with how beautiful and how amazing it opened up my world, not only to heal myself, but also I feel it really activated an access portal for me to experience myself more fully. And that was where I've really felt my multidimensional self coming in on so many levels. Now, I'm not sure if we're going to have time to talk about all of that today. I'll need to get you back again, Rochelle. But for me, I was absolutely blown away, even from the attunements alone, the experiences that I had. And I'll briefly mention that one of them was I was in a meditative state and I knew I was inside this incredible temple. It felt like it was a pyramid. And I was lying on a crystalline slab of stone of some kind, and I was looking up, directly up to the cosmos, and I was at one with the cosmos. It was like I was being blanketed with the cosmos. There was no separation. And then as I got up from this stone bed that I was lying upon, there were these white lion beings, like
Wow.
humanoid white lion beings standing around me. And as I got down off the bed to stand, they knelt down to me. And I was like, I was crying my eyes out because I could feel like the immensity and the emotion of this. It brought me to physical tears. And I said, oh my goodness, what are you doing? Sort of like, get up, sort of thing. And I said, oh, no, I'm going to get down to honour you. And I remember they said, no, we are honouring you for coming in and stepping in and hearing the call to do this work. Now, there was a bit more to it than that. It was unbelievably beautiful. And I shared this with Marion Rowan, who's a beautiful soul who was my angelic Reiki teacher. And she said to me, Kelly, have you heard of the white line prophecy? And I said, no, never heard of that. So she said, I think you should look it up. She said it was prophesied by some of the wisdom keepers on this planet that when the white lions returned to the planet, that was when the frequency was high enough that the Christ consciousness was back anchored into the planet. So I
Mm.
now have a book, which is, I've not written this book, but it's called The White Lion Prophecy, and
Wow.
it goes into detail. I would highly recommend it. It's written by Linda Tucker, and it talks about the white lions coming back physically to incarnate in the planet in Timbavati in Africa. It's so beautiful. There's so much more to the book than that, but I thought, gosh, I hadn't even heard of the term Christ consciousness back in
Wow.
2012, 13. I was like, oh my
Incredible.
goodness.
That's incredible. I've heard, I haven't read that book. I am familiar with the White Lions. And yeah, I have had similar experiences myself. But yeah, that's just, I love it. I love it. And this is it, and I really call, Angelic Reiki, it is a journey of self-discovery.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
yeah.
It's the journey back to the heart. It's the journey back to who we are in truth. And I believe that all healing is the journey back to self-love, in all its many different disguises. And angelic Reiki is such an incredible modality in which to explore that, because it demands that you are in your heart space, right? It demands sacrifice
Mhm.
of our old behaviors, patterns, you know, anything that isn't, you know, of truth.
Yes,
We can't bring it with us. We can't bring the old energy into the new vibration.
yes,
And gosh, the heart is the portal, is the gateway
absolutely.
to it
And it
all,
will be. And what I wanted to come back just a point that you mentioned too about, you alluded to Reiki, you went along to Reiki shares and um, spoken about how, well, I was reading into, I should maybe reword that, Rochelle, that what you were trying to say, I think, was that some of these modalities were restrictive. And it's like, well, you can't be a psychic medium and, be doing the Reiki. Where what I've found over time is that we can't separate who we are out. And I know that from my experience, when I first trained in Reiki, I would go along to Reiki shares, and of course, my mediumship's coming online. I'm having these multidimensional experiences, and that was getting shut down in me. So the people that were running these Reiki shares were saying, no, you can't do that. You can't bring in any of the psychic stuff, any of the mediumship. You can't be talking about dragons. You can't be talking about white line beings, for example. Um, and that's a process that I've been through where, well, I need to honour what is actually coming through as my truth, because I can't shut this out. And that's what I really welcomed about Angelic Reiki, because in that moment I'm thinking, I shouldn't share this because we really should just be connecting with angels just now. And I had like a huge experience where I was embodying my dragon self and all of this. And
Wow.
thinking, I can't share this because, again,
Mm.
the program coming up of what had happened before in my life. If you're a teacher or a head teacher, you can't be bringing in meditation and crystals. People, no, that's not what your job is. So we kind of were breaking through these what I feel are false constructs, and it's like limiting and keeping people down. And that's what I love about Angelic Reiki. It empowers people to be
Mm.
more of themselves, to
100%.
allow all of that multidimensionality in. And because you're going into the portal of the heart, you can't shut down aspects of yourself that
Absolutely.
are
And
who you are.
yeah, and the thing is, for me, like, I was already quite, a confident psychic and medium coming into angelic Reiki, but it took my intuition to another level, which
Mhm,
I wasn't expecting through healing. You
mhm.
know what I mean? Because that is kind of compartmentalizing, but of course, because it's so natural. And what I love about, and whether they're conscious of it or not, but like all of my students, they are learning their own language of energy, because I believe it is a language, and it's like, how, if I say this is how you'll experience it, we're all going to experience it differently. So it's like they're learning how they receive and perceive energy, and are growing in their confidence of handing it over. And I truly believe that whatever we experience in a healing capacity, if you set the intention that whatever you receive is for that person's highest and best, that whatever you receive, it's important to hand over, because it's going to aid their healing, for whatever they're able to receive consciously and subconsciously, so such an important part of the healing,
Absolutely.
is everything that comes with it.
Yes.
And I love it. And honestly, Wednesday is my favorite day of the week. It never gets old. I never get bored. I constantly am pinching myself when I'm in that space, that I get to do this. Like, really? I get to do this? That I'm even here, And
So if people
Yeah.
want to step in, because I really feel like people like myself and yourself, Rochelle, without a shadow of a doubt, are even redefining our concept of teacher. Yeah, so teacher, traditionally people would think of, I'm the font of all knowledge and I am imparting all of my knowledge into you, and things should look like this to be correct. Whereas we're just blasting that right out of the water, and in your capacity to teach people about healing, you are absolutely honouring how it must be unique to them, and it must be um
There's
an
no
honoring
wrongs
of their
either.
journey, and there's no
Mm.
wrongs, because I don't believe in mistakes
Mhm,
either.
mhm,
Absolutely that, Rochelle.
mhm.
So if people tuning in today are interested in learning more about the work that you do, and how they can contact you with regards to working with you, where
Mhm.
would they best find you, Rochelle?
So on Facebook is where I'm most active, or Instagram, not as active, but I am there, or via email. I don't have a website at the moment. This is one of the things. It's like I don't really advertise. I advertise my courses, but I don't really advertise what I do. Like people just find me, they just find me, and I'm continually, putting out that call to for the right people, and there was something else you said, and I'm like, if I'm meant to say it, I'll remember, but I just want you to speak to, and you were talking about people on their healing journeys. um do you know what? I'm obviously not meant to say it. I can't remember what it is, but it popped up, so I just thought I'd give it a moment, but I'm obviously not meant to say it. But yeah, so I'm available on Facebook, and I am based in Kent, Thanet in Kent, but I do hold monthly online shares for people, for people that either aren't local. I am blessed. I have people literally from all over the world jumping on. Um and people that just love being in the energies that are down the road, that will come in person and online. um but I'm also available for one-to-one soul guidance readings, as well, where you know I believe a reading should be a healing experience, and so we go deep, just to, but it's usually for people who are already on their path, who are, or ready to get on their path, and sometimes we just need that guidance, that guidance
Yeah,
back to showing us what it is that we're holding on to that's no longer serving us,
yeah,
right, and how we can let that go. um so yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And with that point, I would love, when we're talking about guidance, because I totally agree, all readings, I offer readings too, and they're always healing. It's healing just in a different way.
Mhm.
I would love to pull a card for you
Oh,
before we
I
finish.
love that.
From
Thank you so much, Kelly.
Oh, you're so welcome. So I've started to incorporate this. So the Soul Call Oracle deck is available on Amazon, everybody. I do a little plug for it
Absolutely
at the
stunning. Yes,
end.
I have mine too.
Thank you.
Stunning.
Okay. So let's pull a card for Rochelle. And obviously this will be guidance for yourself and for everybody tuning in, Rochelle. Oh, beautiful. So we've got the card, Bathed in Starlight.
Oh,
Remember
wow.
your magic. So I'll share this message with you before we go today. Remember, you are woven from the cosmos, bathed in the eternal glow of starlight. The stars that twinkle above also reside within you, illuminating your inner magic. Each of us carries a spark of the celestial, a reminder of our profound connection to the universe. You're not just living under the stars, You are a vibrant part of them. Your celestial origin imbues you with unique magic and potential. As a starseed, your journey on Earth is woven with divine purpose. Though the path may sometimes feel daunting, your presence here is no accident. You bring unique wisdom and gifts that are essential to humanity during this transformative era. In moments of doubt or challenge, look to the stars for reassurance. Just as they persist through the cosmos, bright and guiding, so too does the light within you remain constant and guiding. Your contributions, born from starlight and carried forth in your actions and insights, are invaluable treasures to this world. This card invites you to acknowledge and celebrate your magical essence, encouraging you to shine brightly as the star you truly are, enriching the world with your light. Starlight within, so bright and clear, in cosmic dance I hold you near. Magic of heavens in my soul, starseed's light, complete and whole. It's been an absolute honour and joy to have you on today, Rochelle. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you've shared. And I know that everybody tuning in will have received so much, so much from this beautiful, profound and deep conversation. Thank you for all the work that you do and for being such a bright light in our world. And I know we'll speak again.
Thank you so much for having me and for creating this beautiful space. It's been a true, beautiful space of heart connection, and a space within this space for that light and expansion. And I'm just incredibly grateful to be a part of it. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle.